Welcome back, everyone, to the Risk Intel podcast, powered by SRA Watchtower, where we share risk intelligence with experts from across the banking industry. I'm your host, Ed Vincent, CEO at SRA Watchtower. Welcome back to the Risk Intel podcast. I am very excited to have back with me today for her second episode, Sharon Campbell, who leads the client services function and team at SRA Watchtower. Sharon, thanks for rejoining us today.
Thanks for inviting me again.
Sharon, during our last conversation, you introduced this concept right at the outset when I asked about the areas of responsibility within a client services team. You introduced this concept of Maslow's hierarchy and really addressing the basic needs of an individual or an organization or an ecosystem. I'd love it if you would take that concept and apply that to the client journey. I'd like for us to expand upon the client journey a little bit here today so that folks really can get an appreciation of what to expect on that journey. Conceptually, and then we'll drill into what that means when folks interact with you and your team at SRA Watchtower.
Awesome. So client journey is kind of a standardized, in some cases, 4 steps, 5 steps. It really is, it's broken out into like awareness, consideration, decision, retention, and advocacy. And if I expand on those just a bit, awareness is really the awareness for having a prospect, having awareness of your offering, whether that's through lead generation or conferences or word of mouth, but somebody out there is aware of a product or an offering that you have. From there, it then goes into the consideration of your offering, and that is through sales demos or a deeper dive into the organization, trying to really understand the problem to solve on behalf of this prospective client. Then you get into the decisioning, and that's when the person has decided to purchase your offering. And then you get into the retention, where you want to make sure that the client holds on to the offering, as well as becoming an advocate or that level of advocacy for the offering. And so in my space, a portion of client services or the client services team is actually entered in many organizations. It's okay, we now have a client. It's now time for client services to do their thing. And within SRA Watchtower, it is, we want client services, members of the client services team, to actually be there well before that decisioning process is in there. It's really part of the consideration of the offering. It is done as a collaboration with sales, working with a prospective client for the solutioning in regards to their problem to solve. Whether that is our implementations team, because they want to understand a little bit more about the implementation or what could the implementation look like, as well as the strategic client advisor that comes in, so that way that part of the relationship occurs, again, well before the decision's already been done.
That sounds like that's perhaps a little bit unique, and maybe that's part of the special sauce of bringing folks to the table earlier so that there's an understanding of obstacles, impediments, and anxieties, as well as goals and objectives and outcomes and strategic priorities. What's the reaction that you get from folks when you say we're gonna come into this process maybe a little bit earlier than folks are used to or is typical?
So one of the things that I had mentioned in the previous podcast is, again, being client-led, you are engaging early and often. I should have a t-shirt made that says early and often. But to make sure that you are engaging with clients and so that your presence is known. So from a implementation side, clients you have a tendency to kind of see their blood pressure drop a little bit, or a sigh of relief on, oh, okay, I'm thinking I need to bring in my chief technology officer, and I'm going to have project people and resources and so on and so forth to be able to get this system implemented. But then having the opportunity to actually talk to one of our implementation advisors, who in many cases have been working within banks, whether as a CRO or a CFO or a COO in any of those particular areas, that really understand the situation that the clients are in, understand and have heard multiple times the problem to solve. And then they're feeling, oh, okay, we've landed in a good place. Somebody actually understands my problem, and they also have a vision for the solution of how we're going to solve for it based on using the tool. And so that then is that level of reception that we want, so that clients, again, I talked about in the last one, listening. We are listening to what the problem to solve is. We're listening to the client, and then we're making sure that they feel at ease in regards to the implementation. And it also helps us to then be able to generate a statement of work. So that way we are very clear and articulate on, these are the things that you said, these are the things that we're going to do. And therefore, at the end of any implementation, you want to make sure that clients are happy, and that helps us to get there. I said a lot, I know.
And that then I think probably gets you back to the concepts of retention and ultimately advocacy, because you have folks that, you were clear on success criteria, you walk down that path together, you can validate that the outcome aligns with those objectives, and that's ultimately how you get someone who is an advocate, I would imagine.
Correct. If you walk the walk and talk the talk, and you say, these are the things I'm going to implement for you because these are the things that you said you needed, and therefore at the end of an implementation, we have you sign off that says, you said you wanted this, we said we did this, did we do this? Yes. Then we know that you're walking away very satisfied with the way that your system was implemented. And again, engaging early and often. We continue to come back with touch points and so on. I mean, there's a big, to do when it comes to the implementation, but again, having those touch points afterwards as well, so that it's not, thank you very much, we've implemented you and we'll never hear from you again, or you'll never hear from us again. But again, early and often. Again, I think I need to have t-shirts made, but yes, early and often.
Well, I think that those concepts, again, just like we did in our last conversation, we've taken this, I want to take this framework and apply it then also not only to how a risk department may engage with a partner, vendor, supplier, whether that is in the enterprise risk management area, in the audit area, in the ALCO area, in the fraud area, in the in the cyber risk area, whatever it might be. But also how that risk team engages with the rest of their organization and tries to take an organization down the pathway and on this journey to really embrace and embody a culture of risk. So I think awareness that of the capability, awareness that risk can be part of the kind of strategic fabric of the organization, right? There is a cheerleading step. There is getting people to be aware, drilling a little bit deeper into the consideration of the offering, deeper dive into the value premise, right? And that's when you get into kind of blurring between there and the decision making, right? That can come from the top down. It could come from, right, the leadership team modeling the right behavior, communicating that by embracing risk that you are going to satisfy the regulators, or you're going to increase enterprise value inside the for the organization. Or it can be bottom up, that individuals on the first line see that if we are utilizing a tool set to manage our risk and controls, when we go to that self-assessment step, we can easily put that evidence in place to feed into an ERM system and show those regulators, yes, we've got this control environment in place, and it is really efficient for me to show that. So there is a decision-making step there that is informed by all that intelligence. And then ultimately, as you said, by engaging early and often, you've ensured that you're aligned on success criteria, you're aligned on goals and objectives. And then when you get to the retention, there is ongoing value. You've proven the value, you're delivering it consistently. And that's when you ultimately get the advocates, right? And that's when you're going to get, the folks in the first line, when they hire someone else into the team, they're going to say, you have to do this because it makes your life, easier, better, faster, stronger, all those characteristics that allow you to be more successful in your job.
Correct. It
So I think
allows them to be more successful in their role, and it creates better. And one of the other things, and we haven't even started talking about partnerships, but it creates stronger partnerships between us and our clients.
right. I love the fact that there are so many parallels between the supplier, vendor, partner, and institution scenario,
Yep.
like there are between the risk team and the first line of defense, or the second or the third line of defense, for example. Sharon, we got into the journey as a whole there, but during our next conversation, let's go deep into an area which I think is a strength of your team, and that I think maybe there are some lessons that can be learned on the implementation front, because this is not just implementing risk software, but it is changing culture, changing behavior inside an organization, and what risk teams or PMO offices that are leading this exercise can do to get folks on the bus and to drive successful implementation. So I look forward to unpacking that with you in our next conversation.
Lots of things to talk about in that area.
Thanks, Sharon. Appreciate the time again today.
Not worried. Ciao.